Man, they just don't make movies like X anymore. It's a unique, stylish horror film. Let's talk Ty West's X. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watcher Pass. Today I'm going to talk about X, which is a new horror film by Ty West that came to theaters on March 18, 2022. It is a stylish horror film. It definitely feels like a throwback. It feels like a movie that they just don't make anymore. And I thought it was really good. So my hot take is I think you should watch it. They just don't make movies like this. It's something that you're not going to see a lot of. It has this really great style and feel to it that does feel like a throwback to an older time, but with a little bit of a modern sensibility to it. Now, when it gets into the horror side of things, I didn't love that as much, although the horror is still good. It just feels like it takes away from the beginning style. But overall, this film is something that just feels very unique and refreshing. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in this review. I'm gonna try to keep spoilers to the ending portion of this. So just be warned, when I get to that, make sure to turn it off if you don't want to know what happens in the film. So in X, you have a young group of filmmakers who set out to make an adult film in rural Texas. And this movie is set in 1979, so right at the start of the home movie market, and these filmmakers are hoping to capitalize on that. They're hoping to make an adult film early in the home video market so that they can then kind of establish a foothold and ride that wave. But they also have an interesting main director filmmaker in RJ, who is the director of the film. His goal is to make this not feel like smut, make this feel like an avant-garde French film that has adult content. So you have some fun interplay there. You have some interesting, encounters for the making of the film, but then through and through, it's a horror movie. And as you would imagine, with a group of young filmmakers who are going to this remote town, things eventually turn bad. So things I liked about this movie, the first I've kind of mentioned a few times, is the style. This movie, it just has this really great old style, from the old school kind of credit roll to the text feeling like it's from another time, to even the 1979 when it tells you the year. That is a very stylized, like older format type of text. The movie just feels like an amazing exercise in filmmaking. It feels like a throwback. It has a lot of acting and expressions that feel exaggerated. They also feel like they would be at home in an old school adult movie. A lot of the characters' mannerisms and kind of expressions are exaggerated. And then when they actually film the adult movie, that also feels like something from the past. So this does feel like a refreshing, unique film that you're just not going to see a lot of, and if ever. The second thing I loved is the music. The music is fantastic. It has a great choice of songs to kind of evoke the feeling, evoke the time, and really kind of give it that extra edge when it needs to. You get some really great classic songs that help just kind of set the stage for this movie. The movie feels like it's from 1979. Like all the setting and all the effects and the sets do feel like they are from that time period. But then the music helps to just kind of elevate that and make you really kind of live in this moment. The third thing I like, and I think I like this the most, is the cinematography. I mean, Ty West does an amazing job with the camera shots and the shot choice here. It all really ties together. Like the film starts in what you think is a 4:3 aspect ratio. You just have you're just seeing the scene. You're seeing like cows in a farm, and a police car drives by, and then the camera starts to push forward. And you actually see that you were looking through a barn door, and as it goes forward, it starts to fill the screen, which is it's a great effect to say no, this is actually a modern movie. And as you're seeing more, you see there's actually more police cars out there. Their lights are on, so something bad has happened. And then as you kind of keep tracking forward, you see, oh well, there's a body covered. So it does this really great job of throwing you for a loop. At the start, you're like, okay, this is going to be an older style movie, and then it kind of fills the screen and gives you more information as it's going. And there's all sorts of really amazing shot choices in here. So part of the idea of RJ, the adult film director in the movie, is he wanted to make this like an avant-garde film with French new wave camera angles and really bold scene transitions, things like that. And this film has it, which I love. I love seeing that put into this film. So you get scenes where the camera angles are very kind of odd angles and dramatic angles, and you get scenes where things will flash back and forth between things that are happening in one part of the world and things that are happening in another part of the world. You get these really interesting parallels that happen between some of the characters that you wouldn't normally think would have parallels, but when they flash back and forth, you kind of get a sense that there is something more going on here. It's a really amazingly shot film. And then you also get, it's a horror film, so you would expect this. You get these voyeuristic shots where things will be happening and you'll be watching from the perspective of someone outside. And sometimes that is actually from someone outside. Sometimes it's just to give you some unease, because this film is ultimately a horror film, even though it has this really great adult film style, adult, 70s adult film style at the start. It is a horror film, so these voyeuristic scenes really do a good job of giving you unease, but it also feels at home with the kind of adult film smut aspect of this movie. You do get some like voyeuristic scenes as as someone is maybe watching them make this movie. It is just an amazing cinematic accomplishment. I really loved seeing the camera angles and how they kind of contributed to the overall feel of this movie. And the last thing I liked is the humor. I mean, this film isn't like overtly funny, but there's a lot of really funny instances about this movie. There's a lot of scenes where you'll chuckle. There's like a very dark humor to it. Some of the situations are kind of funny. Some of the I would say this film has a lot more tension than humor, but there's still plenty of humor in this movie. Things that'll give you kind of an awkward chuckle or like a dark comedy chuckle. It helps to kind of lighten the mood in a movie that could be very serious. And you know what? I didn't plan on doing this, but another thing I really love is the tension. I kind of mentioned it with the voyeuristic shots where you have maybe someone watching, but there's also a lot of scenes where you're not sure what's going to happen. There's a scene where you're not sure if someone is going to get shot. There's a scene where someone is swimming and there's something behind them, but they don't notice it. And you're just like, you're at the edge of your seat wondering if something is going to happen. There are a lot of very, very tense moments. And as you know, it's a horror movie, so it makes sense, but it does a really good job of keeping that tension high and keeping you on edge. Now, things I didn't like about this, and I guess this is more of a neutral thing. The film is weird. It is very weird. I liked it. I really liked it. I thought that there was that the weirdness was fun, but just be warned, this is a strange movie. The antagonists are very odd. They are not the most likable characters, and there are some really strange scenes and things that they do. But just be warned, this is a strange movie. If you're into it, you're gonna love it, but it is weird. So my next point being this, like really weird. Like it's a very weird film. But you know what? I think I got the gist of it. Like the film is going to have a lot of odd choices and a lot of odd aspects. Part of that is this just old school style that I loved. Part of it is just there's a lot of very strange horror scenes, but I think as a whole it does come together really well. So I don't think it's actually I don't like. It's more, I guess, more of a neutral. One thing I didn't love about it, but I'm okay with it because of the film as a whole. When it got to more of a horror film, I didn't love that as much as the kind of the setup. That when it got to a horror film, it also felt like more of a throwback film, like an older style horror movie with just brutal kills, quick kills, things like that. But it did kind of lose some of that great feeling and that great kind of, I don't know, adult film 80s style that it had at the start, and it kind of turned into more of a still 80s but like traditional horror movie where you have a lot more dread, a lot more unease, less of that fun that the movie had at the start. So again, it wasn't, I guess it's even though I put it as I didn't like, it's more just because the start was so good that when it switched to more of like a full-on horror movie, it felt more familiar, but also not as unique as the initial start. Now, that being said, the horror side was very good. There was a lot, like I said, a lot of really good tension. There were some very gory kills. There were some very gory moments. And there's a lot of unease in what's going to happen and a lot of very unsettling things that do happen. So the horror side is very good. It just was not as good as the kind of first act of the film. So going to the ending, and as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in this. Most of these spoilers will be about the horror side because that is kind of how this movie ends. So if you don't want to know anything about the film, turn this off. Don't watch this. But if you want to know a little bit more, you want to know a little bit more about what happens and some thoughts about the ending, then keep going. So a little background about what's happening here. There's about 6 people who are there to film an adult movie, and so they rent this, I don't know, this house, this like guest house in this old Texas ranch to film it, and they are making this movie. And the land is owned by this strange old couple. They are very old. They move about very slowly. They kind of they have on all these prosthetics to make them look like very old and also unappealing. Like the husband looks like a goblin from Harry Potter, and the wife, who's actually played by Mia Goth with a ton of prosthetics, also looks, almost like a corpse, like a moving corpse. During the course of filming, you also find out that the wife is kind of intrigued by these youths. I think she misses her youth. She misses her time when she was younger and able to do these, because she is now older and kind of in like a marriage where there's love but no physical contact and things like that. So she is missing all of this, all of these things that she could have done when she was young. So she is kind of constantly drawn to this group and what is going on. And one of the voyeuristic scenes is her like watching them film one of the scenes in the movie. So there's something weird going on. She tries to like entice her husband, but he says like, "Oh, I can't do that. You know, my heart will give out." So she apparently has had like no physical contact for a very long time. But during the course of the filming, the director RJ gets in a fight with his girlfriend Lorraine, because Lorraine decides that she wants to be in the film as well. She likes what they're doing. She likes, you know, I guess the feeling that they have together, and so she wants to be in the movie as well. RJ does not want this. He is jealous. So eventually he decides to leave. Now, while he's trying to get out, while he's trying to, you know, just take the van and go, the wife appears in front of the van and just kind of like stands there. So he's trying to get out. He gets out of the van to like go help her, like say, "Hey, move." And she like tries to come on him. She does like kiss his neck. Again, she like has this need for physical attraction, I guess. And then when he rejects her, she pulls a knife and stabs him in the throat. And then when he's on the ground bleeding, she stabs him some more. And this was a weird scene because it felt like she climbed on top of him like it was a, you know, like an intimate moment, but she's stabbing him. So I think the implication is either she's getting a thrill from this, and this is like a thrill that she's missing in her life and something that she needs. So she's, I guess, maybe like a process killer. I think that's what that would be. Or it's just, you know, symbolism as she's on top and like getting some sort of jolt in life as she's killing this person. So RJ was the first death. So Lorraine realizes that RJ is gone. She's out looking for him, and she wakes up Wayne, who is like the financier, the like main, you know, thrust of this movie. Not the actual thrust, but the main kind of like he is the person that's trying to get everything together. He's not acting in the movie, but he is like trying to get everyone involved. You know, he's trying to make this movie made. He wants to like, he's trying to get this movie made. So Wayne comes out and decides to help. Now they both go look for RJ. And Wayne, you know, goes into a barn looking for RJ. And while he's walking, he steps on this like nail trap, which it was very fortuitous that the nail was there. That felt like, okay, this, you know, this is like your typical horror film, but it wasn't like stairs where they're, you know they're going to go down the stairs at some point and step on a nail. It was just like a nail in the barn. It was very unlucky for him to step on. But he gets hurt and in the barn. Then he sees like these like three little holes in the barn and something moving behind. So he goes to look, and he looks through one hole, doesn't see anything, looks through another hole, sees something weird, looks through the last hole, and that's when a pitchfork goes into his face. And so Wayne is the second person to die, and the wife is the one with the pitchfork. Which this is also very strange, because before she was like barely able to move, and now she is like able to murder RJ and then also like kill Wayne and like get a pitchfork through. It's a very abrupt change in like her physical mobility, but it wouldn't be much of a horror movie if it didn't happen. Also during this time, so now Lorraine is kind of out looking as well, and she comes upon the husband, who's like, he comes out of the house kind of looking around, and she's like, "Have you seen RJ?" He's like, "No." "Have you seen my wife? She comes, sometimes gets confused and wanders." And she's like, "No." He's like, "All right, well, let's go look." And he has a light, and he says, "There's another light in the basement. Go look." Again, never a good idea in a horror movie to go in a basement. Never, ever go in a basement in a horror movie. It never leads to good things. So she goes down to the basement in this like unsettling, tense, dark scene, because there's not a lot of light. She's like reaching around. She finds the torch, the flashlight, and looks around, and there is a body in the basement. So again, not a good sign. This is someone that we don't know, but he's in the basement. So she goes up, tries to get out, and it's locked. She's locked in the basement. She's very unhappy. So now Lorraine is trapped. So I think next Jackson wakes up, and he is the star of the movie, the male star of the movie, and he is walking around, and he sees the old man with a gun, and he's like, "Oh my," like, "Oh God!" And he's like, "Well, what's going on with that?" And the old man says it's for alligators, and he's looking for his wife. Sometimes he wanders around the pond, and he has it for protection in case there's an alligator there. So Jackson, you know, being a former military person, knowing that the old man served, and also being a nice guy, he gets dressed and goes to help look. So they're looking around the pond. He's looking around trying to figure out where where the wife is. And eventually he comes back upon the old man, and he basically accuses all these kids of like enticing his wife and giving her like bad thoughts. And then he shoots Jackson. So now Jackson's gone. So also during this time, Maxine, played by Mia Goth, she's like, one of the main stars in the film as well. She's asleep, and the old lady crawls into bed with her and starts to like caress her. It's a really weird scene because it's like I said, this movie's real weird. It's also weird because Mia Goth plays both the old woman and Maxine, so it's some movie magic to get this to happen. Mia Goth eventually wakes up, sees that there's an old lady snuggling her, and screams as you would. And the old lady like gets out and runs. The scream wakes up Bobby-Lynne, she's another main star of the movie. She's played by Brittany Snow. She gets up, sees the old lady run out, and I think she goes to help her. I think that's what happens. She goes out to like help her, see what's going on. And also, she doesn't know where Jackson is, so she goes down to she sees the old woman go down to like the lake, so she follows down there, and she sees her kind of at the edge of a dock, and so she goes to help. She's like, I wanted to be a nurse. My grandmother sometimes has dementia, so I know how it feels. Let's get you back inside. And the old lady like is nice until Bobby-Lynne is like blocked at the end of the dock, and then she turns mean and eventually just pushes Bobby-Lynne into the water, and a crocodile gets her. So now the only people left alive are Maxine and Lorraine. Lorraine is locked in the basement. So back at the house where Maxine is, she hears the old people coming. They're both coming back from their excursions to kill people, and so she hides. And the old people have this conversation about how the wife wants to feel loved and feel pretty, and the old guy like can't do it, but she entices him, and then they have intercourse on the bed. It's a very weird scene again, and Maxine is under the bed listening to it all. Eventually she sneaks out and very tensely moves and gets out. It also sounds like the old man's heart survives, so his fears were unfounded. He was able to survive his encounter with the old lady. But Maxine is running up to the house trying to get the keys to get out of there. She gets there and finds Lorraine. Lorraine had previously broken a part of the door down to try to unlock it, and the old man had like bashed her fingers in. So she was just kind of not in a good situation. But Maxine opens the door, gets her out. She's like, we gotta go. And Lorraine's like, I'm getting out of here. These people are crazy. I'm running. And she's like, and Maxine's like, let's stick together. She's like, no, I'm out. And she like runs to the door, and she's running out the door of the main house. She gets shot by the old man who's coming back up with his wife after their encounter in the guest house. So now everyone's dead except for Maxine. So before Maxine saved Lorraine from the closet, she had grabbed a pistol that was in the van that her and the crew were using. So she had a pistol on her. When the old couple comes up, she's hiding, and they start dragging Lorraine's body and who they just shot into the house. And while they're dragging in, Lorraine has like a death gurgle, and that like startles the old man, and he has a heart attack right then and dies. So I guess it was partially true. His heart was very weak. It didn't hold out all the way, but hey, you know what? Maybe he died happy. So now it's just the old lady and Maxine, who are played by the same character. Remember that. And they have a final encounter, and they, Maxine has a gun at her, a pistol. The old lady isn't armed, but there's a shotgun nearby, and they have a conversation. The interesting thing here is that a lot of things that Maxine says to her are mirrored by the like preaching happening on the TV. So you get an inclination there that she either was raised in a church or raised by a preacher. You get some inclination there that she has a past in faith, because a lot of what she says is directly mirrored from the preacher. But eventually she gets fed up and pulls the trigger on the old lady, but it doesn't go. Earlier we learned that the gun was not loaded, and that Wayne, who had the gun in his van, just kept it there for protection and looks. But this instance would be a good time to have it loaded. It was not. So she pulls the trigger and nothing happens. The old lady goes for the shotgun, picks it up, and fires at Maxine. Maxine's able to duck so she doesn't get hit, but the blast of the shotgun pushes the old lady out the room, like When I said this had a dark humor, this is a very funny scene. Like the blast pushes the old lady out the house and like into the driveway. It's like a comically long recoil for this weapon. So Maxine goes out and she sees the old lady like crumpled on the driveway, being like, "Oh, my hip, help me, help me!" And she just like puts her mouth to her lips and goes shh, which is something that the old lady did to her earlier. And then Maxine gets in the car, backs up over the old lady, makes sure that was done, and drives away. And as Maxine's driving away from the carnage, we see the preacher on the screen talking about how you should be praying for his daughter. And he pulls up a curtain and it reveals a picture of Maxine. And you definitely see like the prominent freckles that she has, which are shown throughout the film. So we do find out that Maxine does have a past in a preacher family. And maybe that's why she has chosen a very different path for her life. So it seems like she's getting away, scot-free. She's the only one surviving. Issue here is there's a camera, there's a lot of film. She is in that film, but not one of the bodies there. Now, there are going to be a couple missing bodies because like Bobby-Lynne was eaten by an alligator, so perhaps she will never be found as well. But I feel like maybe the cops might have an inclination that she did this. Who knows? Who knows? So now we're back to like the start of the movie when you had the cops pull up and they're investigating this murder. And we see the officers like looking over the bodies. And one of them asks, like, "What do you reckon happened here, Sheriff?" And he says, "The hell should I know?" And one of them comes up with the camera and says, "Hey boss, one of the boys found this inside." He hands the camera over. And he said, "What do you think's on it?" And the sheriff looks at it and says, "Well, by the looks of everything, one effed up horror picture." And that's the credits. That's the movie. It's a good way to end it, and it probably would be a pretty effed up horror picture, except they're going to have an interesting surprise when they watch this film. Now, there is a stinger, and it's a very good one. You should definitely wait for the entire credits to see it. Also, the music is pretty good in the credits, so you can enjoy the music. Now, in the stinger, you see 1979, and then it goes back in time. Like it travels back to 1919. And now we see Mia Goth as the lady, as Pearl, the wife in this film. And it has this like wonderful, bright, idyllic style. It feels like a movie from a different time. Just like this felt like a movie from the 80s. This feels like a movie that you would expect, like a colorized version of like a 1930s film. It's really, really bright and vibrant. And you see that maybe Pearl had a darker past, and this killing thing was not something new for her, because there's a lot of scenes. They're very dark. A lot of stuff happens, and it also concludes saying "coming soon." And I really hope this movie gets made, because that also seems like an interesting like foray into Ti West's mind. I would love to see it. I don't know if it actually will come or if it's just like a really great stinger. We'll have to wait and find out. So after all of that, that's X. Again, it's a really weird film, but it is so unique. It's something that you're probably not going to see much of. I really think you should check it out. If you like horror, if you like older stylish films, you're going to definitely love this. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.